not talking too loud. Hopefully when I play this back I'll be able to hear myself. But I guess I just had some thoughts, some things that I would like to clear up about compost. Because people have been asking me questions, things that I hadn't thought to answer. Like, a lot of people ask questions like what to put in your compost and that sort of thing, and those are the things I'm used to answering. But lately I've been getting some, like, what are you going to do with all that compost? Why would you need all of the compost that you're making? Well, I don't know why you wouldn't want compost, but, okay. Let's say that all of the soil in my yard was awesome. It was fertile. I didn't need to fertilize it at all. I would still compost. And the reason is that it's not as much about making the finished product for me. It's just about disposing of things properly. You shouldn't put things into landfills that you don't need to put into landfills. I don't know. I feel pretty strongly about that. So, growing up in my house, we had a lot of ways, a lot of different locations for our garbage. We had worm food, bird food, pet food, and recycling. And then, in the very last category was garbage to landfill. You avoided filling the garbage if you didn't have to. If you could put it in the recycling, then you would put it in the recycling. If you were tossing out like cereal or breadcrumbs, it was bird food. We'd go out, we'd feed the birds in the lawn, and that was happy and dandy. There were always birds eating in our backyard, and that was fun. And then of course worm food is your compost. And actually, one time I can remember my dad yelling up the stairs, Kristin Michael Cox. And I was like, oh my God, he used my middle name. That means I did something really bad. So I was like, and I reluctantly took the march of doom down the stairs. And he got me into the kitchen. He's pointing into the garbage disposal. He's like, what is this in this garbage disposal? And I look, and I had stuffed like basically a whole sandwich down there. And I was like, oh. He's like, why would you put something down the garbage disposal when the compost thing is right next to the sink? And I was like, I don't know the answer to that. I was just being lazy, I guess. And he was like, well, in this house we have worm food. And so if you're don't throw things down the garbage disposal that don't need to. I don't think I ever did it again. And I don't know. One time I had a boyfriend. He wasn't really into recycling and composting. And imagine me with this person. I've grown up my whole life composting. It was a big deal at my house. And then to be with somebody, I would sneak compost out to work. I worked at Wegmans, and I would sneak like apple cores and stuff, and then like put it in their like landscaping where no one would see underneath the wood chips and compost that way. Well, I mean, it wasn't really composting per se. It wasn't like putting it in a pile, but at least it was putting it back in the environment, because my heart hurt so badly from not composting. And one time I asked him, I was really like, I was trying to figure out a way to present it to him in a, so that he would listen, so that we maybe could start composting. And so I asked him, I said, if you were single, if there was one thing that you could have if you were single again, what would it be? And he said something stupid about, like, more guy time, which was ridiculous because every night they were at our house till all hours in the morning playing video games, his friends. So I was like, oh, okay, more time with the guys. And he was like, well, what would your thing be? And I was like, I would compost. That's it. All I want to do. If I was single, I would compost. You would think he would get the hint, like, the only thing that would make my girlfriend happy is compost. That's all I have to do to make her feel like a free woman. But clearly we're not together. My third story about compost. Okay, so recently Ben and I were at a neighborhood bar. And if you're in our neighborhood, definitely check it out, Caverly's. We're hanging out, and this guy from the Democrat and Chronicle, the local newspaper, came in doing a review of Caverly's. And so, you know, we kind of talked his ear off a little bit about the South Wedge and about how much we loved the bar. And, you know, we're chatty people, Ben and I. When the article came out, it had a whole little like blurb about the townies that he had met in the bar, being me and Ben. And I remember him calling us townies. I was a little bit offended by that word because that's usually a word that I reserve for people who are like, you know, well, I don't know. I just generally think the word townie is, well, not as pleasant as some other words, you know. Neighborhood residents. I don't know. Anyway, townies aside, the story said our names, Kristen Cox and Ben Munson, and then it said, she knew it was love when he took her to the backyard and said, look, I made you a compost pile. Which is true. Well, he said, I've got a surprise for you. And he had, it was funny, I kind of assumed it was flowers because, because he had never gotten me flowers, and I thought, oh, I bet he got me flowers. So I was like, oh, cool, surprise. So then he brings me to his backyard, and he was like, look, I made you a compost pile. And it was Ben's first compost pile ever, and he made it after some scolding. When I first met him and I went over to his house, we ordered takeout, and I was trying to figure out where he kept the compost in his kitchen because I couldn't find one, and I wanted to throw my food away. And he didn't have one, and I was like, wow, this is not going to work. So I was like, something's going to have to change. And, but it wasn't, like, hard to change his mind. He had been wanting to compost anyway. He just needed a little boost, a little encouragement. So, anyways, okay. The reason to compost isn't as much about having the compost. I mean, although that is why I do it, but it's more, the point I'm trying to make is it's more about throwing your waste away properly, you know? Okay, so I think I'm pretty much done with all of my compost anecdotes. I will see y'all soon. It's so late, so I'm off to bed. But I hope you enjoyed my little stories. It'd be really cool to hear stories back about what made you guys all start your compost piles. Did you do it when you were kids? Have you recruited people? Do you talk a lot about your compost? You know, is anybody else obsessed? Like, why am I so obsessed with compost? I don't know. Well, I guess that's all. Good night, everyone. See you all soon.